Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're keeping calm. We're staying local, mostly doing pandemic-y local business stuff around here. But in the midst of all this, I did book some regular guests that had nothing to do with March Madness or, hockey, basketball, maybe the NFL draft. We'll do that in a couple of weeks. But this guy's written a book, and as a guy that's written a couple of books, when I book an author on, especially during these tough times that we're having in the middle of a pandemic, folks are looking for something to take their mind off of, the lies the president tells every day. So The Wax Pack is a new book on the open road in search of baseball's afterlife, and it speaks to me on many levels. First off, I want to welcome, you're a doctor, right? Do most people call you Dr. Brad Balukjian, or is it just Brad for now?
No, you could just call me Brad. I mean, technically I'm a doctor, but, not one that heals people.
Well, a PhD from Berkeley, which means you had more fun than the folks at Stanford. All my Berkeley friends tell me that. Environmental Science Policy Management. You went to Duke, so you suck. Bachelor of Arts in Island Biogeography. Even though we're not in the ACC anymore, we hate Duke. It's sort of just kind of the way it is.
Of course.
But we love baseball, dude.
Man,
so
if you didn't go to Duke, you hate Duke, right?
Well, right. I have. Believe me, I have. Maybe I just have smart friends. I have a lot of Duke friends, believe it or not, that I battle this out with. But The Wax Pack, on the open road in search of baseball's afterlife. What's a PhD in philosophy doing in a place like this, Brad Balukjian?
Well, I have two hats, my science teaching professor hat and then my journalist hat. So I studied journalism and biology in college. My first job out of college was working for a magazine. So I've always done the freelance writing thing, usually in science, but I always had kind of a wild hair up my ass to do this project, to do this baseball book. And,
so you've never really written any other books about sports other than white papers about I don't know what you do, oceanography or whatever. Natural history, sustainability. We're going to get to all that because I'm probably as interested in that as I am in the Carlton Fisk card that you found in your Wax Pack, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've written plenty of mainstream magazine and newspaper stuff, but usually in the world of science. So I had no sports writer background or, and no connections in the sports world, but I did have this crazy idea to do this book. So
okay, so give me the idea on the book because first off, I'm a baseball card guy, right? So, I grew up in the 70s. I was born in 68. When I was 5 years old, my cousin was in the last year of a Hall of Fame career as a Boston Red Sox. And, I still see the 1974 card that came out that he never really played in that season. And I collected those cards. My 73, 74, the 75, and the minis, and George Brett Fredlin, those rookie cards, and Robin Yount. That's my jam, you know what I mean? So, my Sixto Lescano card collection is still here from all of my Milwaukee Brewers, and I know you were a Phillies fan as well. I have my Sixto Lescano Phillies jersey, Bubble P from the anniversary team hanging in the closet here. We love baseball, and then we move on to becoming the director of natural history and sustainability at Merritt College in Oakland, California, or you buy a sports radio station and do this 30 years later. But this speaks to me. Baseball cards, even the cover of your book looks like something that I used to get at Zanino's Corner Store when the cards came in on Monday from Mr. Frank.
Absolutely, yeah. And so for me, I've always been sort of more interested as a journalist in the end than the beginning. And so I was like, okay, what happened? These baseball players, these athletes, what other profession are you pretty much done in your mid-30s and you can never do the one thing you've trained your whole life to do ever again, right? So I was really fascinated by, so what happened to the guys that I grew up with. So you said, you're born in 68. I was born in 1980. I grew up collecting these guys in the mid to late 80s.
I was collecting cards before you were born, Brad,
Right. Sixto Lescano was, I relate to that because I have his 1986 Topps card and seared into my memory.
He was all washed up by then. Come on now.
True. I know you're 83 Phillies. You probably have.
No, I'm thinking more like
from that era.
79, 80, 81 Brewers, and the 82 Brewers beat the Orioles, but like more like this, like in 79 and in 80, my father always got the Baseball Digest, and you could order the whole set, right? So I wasn't as interested in the gum or even the wax packs. And then I became a collector. So I started setting up at baseball card shows when I was 13, 14, 81, 82, 83. There's a guy named Jay Finglass here that had Jay's Nostalgia World and Baseball Card Shop on Chesapeake Avenue in Towson. And twice a year, my dad and my brother would drive me out there, and I get to go through the cards. But I was like a real Beckett guide. I probably bought a Beckett guide right when you were born. 80, 81, 82 was the time that I really knew every baseball card, collected them. I had a 55 Mantle and a Clemente and all those kinds of things in the high number cards, and the trying to keep the borders clean on the 71 tops that were always black. So I was really into baseball cards, which is one of the reasons when they said, "Hey, you want to have Brad on?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I want to have Brad on. I love baseball cards." It was a massive part of my life as a kid,
So right. So the guys that I grew up collecting, I was wondering, well, what happened? What happened to these guys? That sort of universally acclaimed, question of, where are they now? What happened to these?
Where's Rance Molnix? I've often wondered that.
Right. So I thought, well, what better way to get at that than to get a single pack of cards that had never been opened from that era. So 1986 was the first year that I collected as a kid. So get a pack, and whatever random 14, 15 guys are in there, those are going to be the guys that I try to hunt down to find all over the country and tell the story of what happened to them and what happens, is their life after baseball. So that was kind of what got me going initially.
Dude, what's fascinating to me is, so you picked up a pack that had, 16 cards in it? How many cards did it have?
15 cards. One was a checklist, so that was kind of...
Oh, isn't it a downer when that happened? Well, you used to get the rookie cards, and you'd be like, I don't want that one, until it turns out to be Ripken or something, right? Or
right.
Mike Schmidt or something. You have a really interesting category. First off, Brad Balukjian is here, kind of pronounced like Kirkchin, and who I interned under many, many years ago. He's the director of Natural History and Sustainability. He's also written a book called The Wax Pack. And you can check this out. You can buy it on Amazon, buy it out online, and check out what happened to these 15 players. But here's an interesting thing. I'm trying to figure out how many of these guys I've actually had on the show, because I've been doing this for 30 years. I saw you had Carlton Fisk, which he's interesting because when I met my cousin for the first time in my life, I was 5 years old. He played on the 73 Red Sox, and my cousin gave me a baseball autographed by the 73 Red Sox. Carlton Fisk was on that baseball. So Lee Mazzilli is an interesting guy on page 167, because Lee Mazzilli once sat in my studio, and he was the manager of the Baltimore Orioles. Mike Flanagan was so excited that he had hired Lee, and Lee came out to the studio, and he came in and he looked at me like a mafia godfather, and he said to me, "Hey, you're lucky I came by to do this for you today, all right? Because I've been with the Yankees all these years, and, in New York, we didn't have to do this kind of stuff. But for you, I hear you're a good guy. I'll do this for you." Lee Mazzilli lasted about a year and a half here, and he used to take his whole family into Amici's wearing Yankees gear when he was the Orioles manager. So he's kind of an interesting cat for me. But give me some other names here. Go through these guys and what you learned about some of this stuff. I mean, you got a Dwight Gooden record breaker card. I mean, my goodness, in your childhood, when you were 8 years old, Dwight Gooden was like going to the Hall of Fame, right?
That's right. Well, one of the things that I was really impressed by was how open a lot of these players were in sort of opening up to me, because I'm sure in your work that a lot of baseball players, they're kind of trained to not really say anything that interesting when they're playing. They speak in cliches a lot of the time.
Well, we all saw the movie, right?
Right. So I was really impressed by how many of these guys, Rick Sutcliffe.
Sut was in your pack. Wow. Now, Sut's my dude. Now, he started the first game in the history of Oriole Park. I mean, you had a pretty good pack of cards, man. This is an interesting group of people.
Yeah, no, it's a good mix of sort of the obscure to the Hall of Fame, a good mix. So yeah, Sutcliffe, Gary Templeton, Randy Reddy, some of these guys. I was amazed at how open they were, sharing some of the challenges they faced. And I had, like, for example, I had no idea going in how many of these guys had abusive fathers that had kind of like strained relationships with their dads.
Wow.
And how that impacted their lives and their baseball careers. And that ends up becoming this recurring theme throughout the book is, how that strained relationship affected them the rest of their lives. But again, a testament to their, the character that they have. They would be so willing to be open with essentially a complete stranger in sharing a lot of that.
You know what? Anybody can read the book and check it out, but I need to know, like, where did the pack come from? And give me the story on why you picked this pack of, because it could have been 15 other random lives, right? Like, it's literally like a lottery drawing is what you did with this wax
right,
pack.
Which I think makes it fun. I mean, it kind of replicates that experience we have as kids, the opening the pack, and you have that thrill of the unknown, right? So that's why I love the pack as a device to kind of kick this thing off. But no, the pack, as I say in a footnote of the book, I actually opened multiple packs. I didn't switch cards between packs, but I knew if I opened a single pack and like 6 guys were dead or they all lived in Delaware or something, it wouldn't actually make for a very good cross-country road trip book. And I did end up driving over 11,000 miles in 7 weeks. So it's very much of a travel book.
Tell me that part of it. And I did 30 ballparks in 30 days for the Bone Marrow Registry. You can Google that up. Give a Spit is the way to find that. My wife is a 2-time leukemia survivor now. She was a 1-time survivor then. Love of baseball. I had always wanted to do 30 ballparks in 30 days. I remember the George Thorogood 50 States in 50 Days tour back, I think it was in 1980, believe it or not, or 81 or 82, right around the time you were born, Dr. Balukjian. And, I did this tour back in 15, and I wanted to drive it, right, on a bus, and you just can't get from Denver to Seattle, just like, and then down to Oakland in consecutive days. I actually made my journey, and I was going to write a book about it, but I sort of chronicled it as it went on. Social media breadcrumbing, did you do any of that sort of thing as you were doing your 11,000-mile journey here?
Yeah, so I went in and did this. I mean, it was all self-funded. I had no advance. I had no book deal. It was just taking a chance on myself.
Passion project, right? Literally, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So it was, but as I went, I would blog every day. I would, try to kind of share what was going on just to try to get some interest and to, generate some momentum. And it's really hard to, every day when you're on the road like that, to then try to sit down at the end of the day and write something compelling and creative, and but that was kind of, that structure helped me kind of go as I went.
Pitch this to my audience as a pandemic book, if you will, or if you love baseball, because I love baseball, and baseball's interest has waned dramatically. And my name's Aparicio, and my town used to stand for Cal Ripken, And what we've seen now, and baseball's been sort of taken away from us. I think we've all felt it this week specifically. I think we're going to feel all of this for the next, 60, 90, 120, year and a half, depending on who you believe and where you are. I know you guys have been in lockdown in the Bay Area. I'm a big fan of Gavin Newsom, and we sent Pelosi out to you from Baltimore many years ago. But the baseball part of what's missing in April and May and June, people are going to be looking for something. This is more than just a pack of baseball cards. Obviously, this is more like you found 15 subjects to literally go out and try to get to know them a little bit, that you found in a baseball card pack as some sort of, American journey of being an adult and having once been a kid who loved this stuff, right?
Yeah, and these are really, really tough, really trying times, and I even feel kind of guilty just, talking about a book, during
I'm not having a lot of guys like you on, so I thought this would be a fun one, you know what I mean? Like, literally, I need a little, there's no real baseball to talk about, and my team was going to lose 100 games this year, even if they did play. So, it was kind of one of those where, like, a good story, give me a good story this year, especially if I can't go to the beach, Brad, right?
Right, and that's this book does it does provide a nice distraction from everything that's going on. It is a feel good book, but it's got a lot of depth to it too. As as we go in and we explore each of these different players and sort of what's happened in their post baseball lives, and so I think that on the one hand, during this pandemic, it provides some nice relief and some nice escape for fans. But I think also one of the things that comes out of the book is really, I call baseball players accidental Buddhists in the book, because I talk about how the psychology, the mental makeup of these players, what helped make them so successful is really their ability to be in the present moment and to not cling to the past or worry too much about the future, to let things go. And so I think the message of, trying to not get ahead of yourself, trying to stay in the moment, appreciate what's right in front of you, is really important right now, that we don't take anything for granted, that we take it, one day at a time. And I think people will really, the message will resonate of not only how these players approach baseball, but their approach to life in general, and how their approach to baseball ended up serving them well in their life after baseball.
Brad Balukjian is here. The book is Wax Pack, and On the Open Road in Search of Baseball's Afterlife. I've got the book up on the video set here. You can go check it out. For all of you missing baseball, I felt like this would be a good one. So you open the pack, and these are the names. I've had Carlton Fisk on the show over the course of time, but I know Rick Sutcliffe relatively well. He's in my phone. He comes on the show. Run me through these players, and I would think that that you showing up at Sutcliffe's house or wherever you had coffee with him, Independence, Kansas City areas where he used to live. I'm not sure if he's there. I knew him when his daughter was a young girl, and he was sort of the grizzled veteran on this team trying to make it and opening a ballpark and all that. He's now a broadcaster, and a very frank broadcaster, quite frankly, I think, and a guy that's still a part of baseball. Some of these people gravitated to a life in baseball to some degree, and some didn't, right? And that unto itself is a fascinating thing, to say that these are all 60, 70-year-old men right now. Some of them probably don't watch any baseball, because that's what my experience has been. I'm now 52. I've been thrown out of baseball for 15 years by Peter Angelos. But all the guys I knew in the 90s and the aughts that I covered, they're all sort of my age or a little older. I'm always fascinated to catch up with them, and they literally they have nothing to do with baseball. They don't watch baseball anymore.
It's a great story you bring up, too, about so Sutcliffe in talking to him, shared the story about the opening of Camden Yards and how, he had no intention of really going to Baltimore that year as a free agent. And then he basically saw the stadium, kind of went there early in the year with Johnny Oates and was basically told, hey, you're going to start the first game ever in this stadium. And there's a funny story he told me about how he basically said, like, well, why me? Like, I'm not as good as Ben McDonald or Mussina, I shouldn't be the guy starting. And they said, yeah, but we're gonna pit you against their number ones, and we're gonna have our other guys face the number 2 and 3 starters on other teams, and that's going to be our strategy. And he goes out there, I think, opening the first day of Camden Yards. I think he threw a complete game shutout.
Yeah, it was like an hour and 56 minutes or something. It was ridiculous, yeah. I'll get the box score up. I mean, somebody will beat me up because I don't know every intricate detail. But other than the Sorrento home run, I think things went well that day.
I also I want to know how you got Carlton Fisk on your show, because that guy turned down Bob Costas, and I talk in the book about how you certainly wouldn't talk to me, and so I had to kind of go rogue to try to get to him. But what was your secret sauce to get to?
I ran an interview that I did with him last summer here. He did my show in the dugout, I think, at the 99 All-Star game in Boston. I was nationally syndicated at the time on Sporting News. And then I think because he played with my cousin, we sort of followed up and he did a segment. I did a little thing. Look, the Orioles stink so bad that last year I knew how bad it was going to be. And they're just not something you can talk about when they're playing 300 ball. I mean, literally, and that early in the year. Last year when Frank Robinson died, I went back and did my own research as a 51-year-old, right? And I found Frank Robinson. I wondered if Frank had ever done my show, and he had one time. Frank was always sort of curmudgeonly. There was a guy that was I didn't think I had interviewed Frank Robinson, and I had. But I went back into my archives, and I found a 2-hour conversation with Brooks Robinson, which was the first one I ever had at a Hooters in the middle of the baseball strike. And I found all this stuff, and I called called it all. And in the summer, I took the month of July off, and all I ran were Hall of Fame conversations. And I found that I've talked to like 72 Hall of Famers in my career, and I ran them all, and I just ran them like during the All-Star week because there was nothing else going on. But Fisk was one of those guys that I interviewed Pudge when he was a Chicago White Sox at the end, DHing in the early 90s at Camden Yards, where I never found him to be a difficult guy. Quite frankly, I found him to be a guy that if you wanted to talk baseball, loved to talk about baseball because that was what he did. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I found him to be no
that's
nonsense, but a guy that would talk baseball. And I'm a different era. I haven't talked to these younger people in 15 years, but the people of my era, I guess sometimes my last name opened the conversation of, well, hey, you at least know baseball and like baseball enough to talk baseball with people. And the locker rooms were more open, right? Baseball had a more open culture to talk to reporters. I do find it fascinating how quickly baseball players have become just citizens. Like the adoration and the autographs and all of that stuff of your childhood, I find it a much more comfortable conversation as a 50-year-old, as probably you did as an adult, going around and asking these players questions that I wasn't asking them in 1993 around the batting cage, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, certainly there's I think a lot more openness now, and I think that's, generally a good thing for this kind of writing.
Well, and in your case, to do a book and to research it, open arms from all the people involved, or was it, you said Pudge was more difficult. I would think most of these guys were pretty sure. Come on by, have a coffee. You're doing this weird book, right?
Yeah, for the most part. But probably not surprisingly, the bigger stars were probably the hardest to get to. And I guess that maybe because some of them didn't, maybe they're still on their ego trip from playing or what. But Vince Coleman wouldn't talk to me. Doc Gooden, asked me to pay him $500 to talk to him, and I was going to, and then I was in his living room ready to talk to him, interviewing his son, and he was completely no-showed. So that story is kind of a, yet another entry in the Doc Gooden tragedy. But yeah, for the most part, guys had a very positive attitude.
Did Lee Mazzilli say anything about Baltimore at all? Because I would think that it probably wasn't a very pleasant experience for him here. It's probably more fun winning as a Yankee, a lot.
No, we didn't. We didn't talk about Baltimore. I also didn't really ask him about it. I mean, I was really asking more about that, their personal relationships, their family, their personal lives, than going through kind of every part of their careers. But he didn't volunteer anything about his time in Baltimore.
All right, give me your story, man. You're a Phillies fan. You live in Oakland. You wrote this really nifty baseball book on this journey of people, and I think some real depth to it beyond baseball. But you are the director of natural history and sustainability at Merritt College in Oakland, California. By the way, I didn't pan the Oakland Stadium on my 30 ballpark tour. I've since not been to the new Atlanta ballpark, so I still haven't been to all of them. But I think I've seen Major League Baseball in 50-some ballparks. I saw Nair doing something the other day about how many ballparks we'd all been to. I love that old dump, and one day all that foul territory, all those rats, all the flies in the bathroom, all it's all going to go away. It's the one place I can still go, Brad, and watch a baseball game, and it smells like Memorial Stadium in Baltimore when I was a kid. It looks like it, it feels like it when you're in it. It's a sense of nostalgia that I have nowhere else in my life that's left for me and my father, who left us in 1992. So Oakland's kind of a special place for me when I go out to that dump.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, last year we had this A's Access thing. I had basically season tickets the whole year, all 81 games. I mean, I didn't go to all of them, but you could. Plus half off all concessions in the ballpark. And like a 25% off merchandise. The whole thing was $270 for the whole season. I mean, that's insane.
I can't even get A's games on TV for that much.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the book sort of starts in the Coliseum. I go when baseball is out there and happening. I go and I pay like $15, and I literally have an entire section protected myself.
Well, I mean, I love the
And
Bay
so,
Area, right? So, I mean, I stay in San Francisco when I go. One of my dearest friends in the whole world, plug for you, Julio Bermejo. Go to Tommy's Mexican. Go get some delicious margaritas out there. But I prefer the Oakland experience to the San Francisco experience. And I often ask myself, if I lived there and I just wanted to go to games, like where I would go and why. I don't know. I'm a Baltimore guy, right? I'm not a wine and cheeser from D.C., right? So I'm much more about the gritty, experience. Probably I would be the one in Kelly Green and gold banging the drum out in right field or whatever.
right.
That's
It's kind of like the Orioles are to the A's as the Nationals are to the Giants, right?
Well, we lose more than the A's do, but yes, I mean, I'm generally with you. No one's written any Moneyball or done any movies on our leadership, I assure you. Only one written a book on our leadership's me, and you can go check the Peter Principles out for the history of Peter Angelos as well. So, but that whole Bay Area experience there's a ball game every night, though. I mean, if you love baseball, it's like New York, it's like Chicago, and I lived in Chicago on and off for 3 or 4 years, and I found that to be sort of harrowing because it was difficult to get to those ballparks. I find the BART in the Bay Area, you get on, you get off, you walk into the stadium. It's not a bad deal, really,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Which one? Do you prefer Oakland? Do you ever go to San Francisco?
Occasionally, but as I talk about in the book, to me, what is it now? Oracle, whatever the new name of AT&T. It's like going to like a happy hour. Everyone's just kind of like, people aren't paying attention to the game. It's like this socialite thing. So, and it's super expensive. I'd much prefer I go to the Coliseum by myself. I take my scorebook. I sit in the upper deck in the nosebleeds, and it's very meditative, to do that by yourself.
Hey, you sit out there with the big, gigantic Eckersley and the Ricky and the.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I see. I got pictures with those. Tequila was involved that day, and my wife had survived once, but we had a pretty good day, as I remember on our baseball tour. Brad Balukjian has written a book. It's called The Wax Pack: On the Open Road in Search of Baseball's Afterlife. Last thing for you, what is the director of natural history? I'm dying to ask you. I cared way more about this part of like what you do than the baseball part, but
sure.
We're at a pretty interesting time in humanity where. Dumb scientists like you are like fake news and stuff. So I want to give you an opportunity to be a scientist and enlighten the folks out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. We're at a time in our history where faith, sort of belief versus science, has become this thing, and I'm out there, training the next generation of scientists and people, just citizens in general, about why science is so important. Our program is basically directed at training people to work in the environmental world. So people to work for nonprofits, to work for government agencies, local park agencies, and basically give them an education in, okay, here are the organisms, the animals, the plants that live around here, and here's how they all fit together, and here's why it matters to actually, come to study the natural world and to use science to inform policy. So we are all about the facts and the science and how important that is for bigger issues in our society, obviously climate change and everything's connected, right? I mean, global health is related to climate change. It's all part of the same thing.
Yeah, well, if they just raked the leaves in the forest, that wouldn't happen. You know that, Brad, from being out there.
Right, the fins, yeah.
Yeah.
They're great at raking.
Man, I commend you on your mission to complete a book, any book. I love having authors on, especially with passion projects that involve baseball and baseball cards and natural history and sustainability and watching games in Oakland, which is one of my favorite things to do. So it's great having you on. Good luck with your book. I know these are trying times. Please stay safe out there in the Bay Area. Take care of it. I am in mourning, Brad, because I had rooms all booked out there 3 nights. There was going to be wine, tequila, great food, Yang Sing dim sum, and 2 nights with Pearl Jam that are just washed away at the Oakland, across the parking lot from your favorite place there. But I still sit on the tickets for both nights. So we're hoping to put this thing back together, and maybe we can have some sustainability of the Pearl Jam concert sometime in the fall, and I'll see you out in Oakland, all right?
Yeah, you and me both. I had a 35-city book tour planned for this. It's now gone, but people can go to waxpackbook.com, and we're going to try to reschedule at some point and do the best we can.
Hey, do
And
your
thanks for
best to
having me on.
educate people on the natural history stuff too, and all that as you're doing your baseball tour. Make sure that the good journalists ask you about the important stuff, get you out of the toy department. All right.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, man.
On.
I'll let everybody at Cal Berkeley know that I had you on because they'll every time I have somebody from Stanford on, they let me know. All right.
Sounds good.
See you later. Brad Balukjian, Dr. Brad Balukjian, PhD, Director of Natural History and Sustainability. He's written a book called The Wax Pack. It is on the open road in search of baseball's afterlife. 15 baseball players in a wax pack in 1986, and then tracking them down. Lee Mazzilli and Rick Sutcliffe among them. Pretty good little baseball, Baltimore, Oriole Park roots there for you. All right, I'll get back to local business and local things and what's going on and Baltimore Positive as we continue on. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We're keeping calm. We're staying local. And we are Baltimore Positive.